right, Renee, thank you so much for joining me today on my podcast, Who's Behind the Headline. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for even going behind the headlines and giving us an opportunity to tell our story. So thank you.
Of course, of course. So I've been working with you on and off, I feel like, for the past 2 years. And I was so inspired by your organization, nonprofit, FedUp, because through my line of work, I meet so many people that experience their very worst day. And often when that happens, I think we underestimate how little support there is, how little direction there is. And I feel like that's kind of where FedUp steps in, to kind of help be that backbone and support for people in those times where their world is completely changing. But I know that obviously for you and the other women who created FedUp, it comes from a deeper place. And that's where I want to go behind the headline. And first, I want people watching to be introduced to your father and your brother. So if you wouldn't mind just, talking to me a little bit about them, what your relationship was like with them. What are some of those cherished memories when you think back?
So my dad, of course, was my dad.
Yeah.
He was my best friend. My dad, oh God, he was just a personality. He was the person that filled the room, just with his persona, his personality. He never knew a stranger. He's the person that's going to pick up the hitchhiker or, give the homeless person something to eat. Yeah. He taught us a lot. Like, I did not at the time appreciate his wisdom, but when I tell you, my dad loved his family. He loved people, but he loved his family, and he wanted to always make sure he imparted knowledge on us and always wanted us to be the best versions of ourselves. And so he would drop so many things that I hear now that at the time when he would say things, I didn't realize how profound they were. But he just taught us so much, and he loved us fiercely. He taught us about being loyal. He taught us about hard work. My dad, really, people talk about the American dream, and oftentimes they'll talk about it more in relation to immigrants. But my father truly was the American dream. He grew up very humble means, poor, yeah. Very much so, but he worked. He worked very hard. He retired. He invested his money. When my dad got killed, the headlines would say landlord, because he became an investor. He bought property all over the city. Yeah. He was very intentional about the property that he bought, just being who he was, just very true to himself. He bought them in properties in underserved neighborhoods, and he would, fix them up, fixer-uppers. One of them was actually a rooming house where people could rent a room for about the week or about the month. Wow. And then the downstairs was a, single family home. But he truly was the American dream. He became very successful in just considering where he came from. And he believed in this city. He believed in this community. He believed in giving people not only a second chance, but a third chance and a fourth chance. And so he was so intentional about where he rented, because he said, these are the people that can't get credit. These are the people that don't have a job to put on an application. A lot of them were handymen or did things or labor ready, where they would pick them up each day to work. They had horrible credit or no credit, obviously. A lot of them didn't have a steady job, so you can't sign a lease and you can't pass a background check. Yeah. So he was very intentional about giving people a second chance. He's like, everybody deserves another chance. Everyone is someone. It's like, a man needs to be able to feel like a man. And he was, and unfortunately that came back on him, but we still believe, there was this one, it ended very unfortunate, yeah. But we believe and still believe in this community, and believe in helping people, and believe in loving people, and understanding that people need another chance because of my dad.
Yeah.
That's what he taught us.
I think you have carried on that legacy beautifully.
Thank you.
You know, just hearing you talk about him, I see so much of you in him.
Thank you.
And I think too, it sounds like your dad, like he really wanted to love and protect and grow his family. And it sounds like he cared about doing that to the people around him as well. Like, it sounds like as long as you had him in your corner, like you were going to be okay.
My dad is the one that everybody calls. If something's going wrong, you want him. He was very smart. He thought on his feet, and the man was fierce. There was nothing that he was afraid of. He was not afraid of anything, and he would take on whomever he needed to, whether it was, politically, religiously, whatever. He believed in what he believed in, and he stood behind you, like, no matter what was going on. I'm like, well, let me call my dad. Let me call my dad. And he's the person that was like always there, like magic, like no matter what, he's showing up. I don't care if it's the kids' first day of kindergarten, and he has a boatload of grandchildren, but he's going to show up to make sure he's there for the first day of kindergarten. Make sure he showed up for field trips, sports. It's not just the game. He's the man to stand in there at practice, talking to the coach. Let me give you some pointers, so that was my dad. He was a fierce lover of his family, a fierce protector. And that haunts me to this day, because the one time he needed protection, we were not there the one time. And I just always thought that he was invincible. And he was literally, it sounds so corny, but he literally was our hero.
Yeah. And I think it's amazing too to have that view of your father and have someone that that you could depend on. And I can also imagine it was extremely painful and almost like kind of losing a sense of identity when he was stolen away, right? Having that person that you could always depend on. I wanted to ask you, like, how big was your family? Were you close with your mom? Like, how many siblings did you have too? And, what was losing your father? I want to know what it was like for you, but what was it like for your family as a whole?
It was devastating. For my mother, yes, we were very close to my mother, who died when I was 17. So my mother had breast cancer, and so she died, and that completely shifted the dynamic of our family, because my mom was a stay-at-home mom for most of my childhood. And she did everything for us. She was mom. She was on the mom duty. She packed the lunches. She cooked breakfast, dinner every day when you came home. All the friends called her mom. And my dad was the one who was the provider. So he was working all the time. He was the disciplinary, because everything that happened, mom was, all right there. So if it elevated to dad, you knew, honey, you're in trouble. And so when my mother died, it just shifted the dynamic. Now, all of a sudden, my father has to play both roles. And, we always call my father like an OG. And he just very traditional, the man's the head of the household, the man's the provider, the man's the tough guy. So he was never, especially with the boys, affectionate in terms of hugging and kissing, because he taught them, men have to be men. And he was that person. Right. He was with the girls because he's I have to protect my daughters. And we'd say, well, your sons have girlfriends. And he's like, that's their daddy's job to protect them. This is my job to protect my girls. And so when my mother passed, we got to meet a totally different side of my father. You always knew that you were loved with him, because like I said, he's going to show up. He's going to protect you. He's going to make sure nothing happened to you. Yeah. He's going to give you wonderful advice and impart so much knowledge in you. But when my mother passed, I had two little brothers still left at home. Yeah. And so my mother, would rock my baby brother to sleep every night. Now, mind you, he was 4 when she passed, but she was still rocking him to sleep every night. And those were the things that she did. But my dad took those things up when my mother passed. So he's hugging my brothers and, giving them, kisses goodnight. And my older brothers would say, hey, what's going on? What's this? Who are you? What's this hugging and kissing stuff going on? And he said, they don't have a mom.
He really stepped up to the plate.
He stepped up to the plate, and and it was so sad that my mother died. And it's something we thought that, we wouldn't get through, but just finding that silver lining in something so horrible, her passing away so young, the silver lining is that we got to see another part of my father that maybe he didn't even know existed. He had to tap in, and he grew as a person and just became, not only our dad, because I was 17 when my mother passed, but we became friends as I became an adult. And so and then seeing him vulnerable and seeing him hurt and seeing how strong and resilient he was, it birthed something even more in us, I believe. So it was very devastating for us when my mother passed, and then to lose my father years later. Even though I was, in my 20s, I'm an orphan at this point. So it definitely hurt us greatly, but it also helped us bond closer together because we're like, well, we all we have, you know. So, yeah.
Well, it's amazing to hear that about your dad, because I think, there's a lot of people who might not have been able to make that shift, like to be able to step into the mom role, especially after, your mom did such an amazing job at it for so long. Like, you guys were still like young teenagers, and, but the fact that he was able to like recognize, like, this is really what my family is going to need, and then lead by example, that is beautiful. And, I'm so sorry too that you had to, I can imagine, grow up very quickly, losing both parents very young, and you suffered another loss, your brother as well. And I want to know too, I want to know more about your brother. We can, go into more about him. But I also want to know, what was it like to be confronted with death so young and with very important people to you?
So, of course, it's life-changing. It alters your perspective because you think your parents are invincible. And so with my mother, she had cancer and she was sick. And although she died relatively quickly in terms of a terminal illness, you had a bit of time to kind of process, although you couldn't fully comprehend this because of her age, what was happening. But there was nonetheless still a transitional period. And we were there in the hospital room with her. We knew she was passing. We didn't want to accept it. My parents are very protective of their children. She knew early on that she only had a short amount of time to live. And she told the doctors, and she told, the adults in the family, she's like, I do not want my children to know, because she didn't want us not living our lives, not going out and just being children. Like, she knew that we would just be very focused on her and just start to wilt away. And she didn't want that for us. And so my dad had to endure that, keeping that secret, trying to keep a brave face along with her. But as she got very sick and was actually hospitalized, in her literally last hours, they told us she was, transitioning. Yeah. So we did have an opportunity. We were there with her. We had the opportunity to tell her that we love her, to hold her hand, and we were by her hospital bed. So it was devastating, and it was very difficult. And I was young. I was a kid. And so with my father, so that, kind of shifted. But you think, okay, it makes you watch people a little closer. Are you sick? What's going on? If anybody got sick, you start thinking, are you going to die? So that, of course, changed us. But then when my father got killed, who we literally thought was invincible, and who was just such a good person.
Yes. Sounds like he was loved and respected by so many.
My father was very, very loved and very well respected in this community by whomever, politicians to the homeless person on the street. He was very well known. And to just have him taken, and it's, it's very difficult because we were trying to tell him during those times. It's when things started to shift in the community and you start having drug dealers and, people, I guess, maybe the beginning of what they call trap houses or whatever.
Okay.
And so the house that he had, it rented out the single rooms like I was telling you before. And he had one guy who had gotten addicted to drugs or, falling back off the wagon. And he was having drug dealers over there, and I don't know what the process was. Maybe in exchange for drugs, maybe they were using his room.
Okay.
So my dad got wind of it, and he was very much a not on my watch kind of guy. And so he would go up there, and he's like, I ran them off. I went up there. So he'd start driving by at night, different times to make sure they weren't there. And we would tell him, like, Dad, these are different times. You cannot do that. But just him being true to character, just being who he was, true to him, we said, call the cops. And he said, no, I don't want anybody going to jail. I don't want anybody getting arrested. They just can't do it here. I'll take care of it. And we don't know, but we feel very strongly that he had a confrontation with those guys instead of calling the police. And, like he would always do, run them off. But then he also, at this point, he knew he could not help the person who was renting the room anymore. It's like, I can't care for you more than you care for yourself. And you have to go because now you're putting the other residents at risk and all that. So the next day he was there cleaning out, getting it ready for a new tenant. And somebody came up and shot him in the back, on his own property. Right,
when he was just trying to do the right thing and
he was definitely doing the right thing and protecting. But when you think, somebody, even though this wasn't his home, it was his own property. So when you think about like, oh, where's Dad? Oh, he's on Patterson. You're like, oh, you feel safe with that because it's the kind of that sense of like, oh, he's at home, whatever. So for him to get gunned down, shot in his back on his own property, while trying to help people, by trying to not get people in trouble.
Right, trying not to get the police involved, right?
Yeah, and it's causing more drama because his whole thing was, they have enough rope, they're going to hang themselves. Like, I don't need to call the police. They can't do it here, they can't do it on my watch, but they will seal their own fate. And shot him, 7 o'clock,
In that case, to this day, has still never been solved.
To this day, the case is unsolved. And one of the reasons that I want to always talk about my father, and I always want to tell the story, because I'm hoping that someone, somewhere, who knows something, will say, you know what, I have the missing piece to the puzzle. Yeah. Or maybe they don't realize they have the missing piece to the puzzle, but they'll just come forward and tell what they know, and it's the piece that we need to fit to solve it. So it's been all these years, and it's still unsolved. It was 7 o'clock on Patterson Avenue in the evening, so people are still out.
Right.
It was a house, so we know there are people who know.
Do you believe
what
that
happened?
I feel like in a lot of cases that go unsolved, people know something, and even law enforcement might even know who it is.
100%.
But that doesn't mean that, they have the evidence that they're looking for to take it to a prosecutor and then for the prosecutor to move it forward.
Yeah. When my dad got killed, we hired a private investigator. We offered a $10,000 reward. And so the detectives, the private investigators, they told us who they believe. So it's a difference in when you learn this, unfortunately, from the School of Hard Knocks, of actually being in it. But there's a difference in knowing in what you know and what you can prove.
Yes.
So they have to be able to have enough evidence to bring the charges. Well, you can bring the charges, but you have to be able to make them stick. Yeah. And so in the absence, in my father's case, of somebody coming forward and saying, this is the trigger man, or these are the because I think everybody involved, whether you pull the trigger or not, there needs to be held accountable for that.
100%.
They're all responsible. But his murder is unsolved. We feel very strongly we know who did it, and that's even
I can
more
imagine.
hurtful because you're living your best life, and you're doing all the things that you robbed us of, and it's not fair.
Yeah.
It's not fair. So added to the hurt, the grief, like we had with my mother, but with my dad, there was the shock. And then there was the anger because somebody did that. I didn't live in a world where people took someone's life. Like, what?
Right. And then I feel like, okay, yes, took someone's life, but like so often on TV we hear, okay, someone has been murdered, and then a few hours later, a few days later, so-and-so has been arrested. And I feel like you think, like in your head from growing up and hearing, like, this is what's supposed to happen. The police are supposed to be there. The investigators are supposed to be there to protect us and to, like, bring us some sort of justice. And I feel like in your case, and probably what you see a lot, is it just does not always go that way and go in that direction, which is extremely devastating for the families. And I can imagine it almost like makes it impossible to, I think in that case, like the peace really has to come from within 100%. Like any peace that you're going to be able to make out of, losing your father and your brother, like that is really going to have to come from within, because no one else is giving you that sense of justice, right? Or validation.
Yeah, it's spot on, and that's where you really have to lean on faith. With my dad getting killed, you talk about like the peace, and then there's also a fear factor. We don't know who did this. We have an idea who did it. We know that there were several people involved.
Right.
And so this person's still out there. These people are still out there. And you don't know who you can trust. You don't know who to say certain things to. You're always looking over your shoulder because you don't know why they did it. You don't know who did it. And so that is truly, truly, truly where faith comes in. And that helps me, turn to the word. God didn't give us a spirit of fear, power, love, and a sound mind. And you have to walk in that. And so it's one thing to say you have faith, and it's one thing to show up in church on Sundays and, Bible study on Wednesday, but it's another thing to have to walk this faith thing. And so in that, it did strengthen my faith because you have to turn to God in times like this. My father is not coming back. He is dead. My heart is broken. My peace is gone out the window. I am scared. Nobody can help you. These are the things that my dad would normally, step in and help with. Like, oh, Dad's here. Like, they say.
Your mom.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so for that, it becomes a faith walk.
Yeah. Will you talk to me a little bit about your brother? What was your relationship like with him? And, what was so special about him?
Everything. It's my baby. It's taking everything. So Jamie was my brother, but he was my baby. I did everything except for birth him. My parents had him when they were older in life. And so he was a surprise. So when he came home from the hospital, it was just, oh God, like just a joy, because my brother who's directly under me, he was more my rival. And, hey, I was the baby, get out of here. And then, here comes, Jamie all these years later, and he was everyone's baby because by the time he came along, everybody's, out of the house for the most part. They're adults, and so they're working. And so, he was our little doll.
He was a little joy.
He was a little joy. And Jamie, just very much, loved on and spoiled and had a very traditional childhood, church choir, sandlot sports, just everybody just gravitated towards him. He was a very outgoing, just a bright spot in our lives. When I look back on Jamie's life, in retrospect, he didn't have the same joy that we had. And he would try to express it.
Yeah.
So I'm learning as I'm able to process and articulate what he was trying to express to us that he would go through. It was, around him, 7 brothers and sisters who all very close and just lavished him with love and smothered him basically. And he would say he was lonely. And we're like, how are you lonely? You got all of us and we love you. And he said, I know you guys love me and I love you. But he's like, so when we have family reunions, we're all sitting around. And when I tell you, we cut up.
Yeah.
And we tell all of these stories and remember this and remember that. And, we reminisce and we laugh and we, recount. And Jamie was like, I was never a part of that stuff. So it's like I'm on the outside listening to somebody else's family. Right. And I didn't realize how hurtful it is just because of his age. He didn't have the experiences. He didn't have the memories with us. And we would talk to him about how much we loved him. And he was like, again, I love y'all and I know you love me, but it's not like I have brothers and sisters. It's like I have a bunch of moms and dads. So he had a very sad, lonely existence. He played sports and we were very supportive of that, and he was very good. I'm an educator. So, every boy in the 7th grade thinks he's going to go to the NFL or to the NBA. And we know that's not the case. Jamie truly had the it factor. He had that talent that recruiters were like, he's it. He has the it factor. He can do that. So I just think that, and I like to tell Jamie's story because I think that along the way, the narrative of who he was kind of got shifted. And we allowed that because Jamie started going down, started kind of connecting with some unsavory characters, kind of getting off path a little bit. He had a couple of brush-ins with the law, but he never spent any real time. He never went to prison. He would maybe spent a couple of weeks in jail a couple of times. But because he had started to go down this path, we didn't shy away from it if somebody said, was he involved in gangs? And we were like, yes. And we kept going to the police, telling them there are gangs in Roanoke City. And they wouldn't listen to us at that time. They would say, well, if you don't call them that, they don't exist. And we're like, what? Right, yeah, if you don't say it, you guys are giving them life, don't say that. And they wouldn't do anything. Flash forward to today. That's what they want to think. Yeah, right. Well, flash forward to today, honey. And what'd you say again? Don't say it? Okay. So don't exist? Gotcha. So we really tried to get help for Jamie. And let them know that there's these gangs, there's drugs. And Jamie started to kind of get mixed in with that crowd. It wasn't... Did he still have an opportunity to course correct? He was 23. He was a kid. So did he have the opportunity to course correct? Absolutely.
But once you get pulled in with those crowds, it can almost be impossible to get out.
At that time, I don't think that they were... they were just getting started. Okay. So it was more like a neighborhood thing. You had Villa Heights, Lincoln Terrace type thing. And again, Roanoke was a small town at this time, so everybody still knows everybody. Even though you were beefing with the people over here in Southwest, well, you probably went to elementary school with them. So, they're like, so at that time, course correction was definitely still a possibility. But somebody killed him before
you got that chance.
We had the opportunity. So, and I think that, and so I think that somewhere along the line, people started thinking like, oh, he was this, drug dealer. He was this horrible person. He was involved in gangs. And that was just absolutely not the case. Was he headed perhaps? We don't, in that direction, was he affiliating with some people that were unsavory? Did he have a couple things under his belt rap sheet wise? Yes. Yeah. But he never, and I think we allowed that narrative because we didn't want to say, oh, no, 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 because we wanted to, whoever did this, we wanted them incarcerated. We wanted them to pay for what they've done. So we've never tried to hide any unpleasantries about James. Never tried to sugarcoat anything. You know, we stand on who he was, and anything that he did, he did not deserve that. But Jamie was just, you know, a kid. He was 23 years old. Yeah. He lived, you know, in our family home. It's not like he was some big, you know, because it really hit me. I was on another podcast, and the podcaster, I guess, had done some research or whatever, and she was trying to get some background, and she goes, tell me about Jamie's lifestyle. I was like, lifestyle? He was 23, he was a kid. And she alluded to almost like a kingpin or something, and I'm like, well, you know, he lived in our family home. He didn't own a car. He didn't even have a car.
People have the wrong idea. I mean, to me, when you talk about him, it sounds like he probably maybe suffered with some depression growing up. 100%. And like, you know, even if there's, because people like that, even if there's 100 people around them, they'll still feel very alone. And then I feel like, you know, it's common for maybe boys that suffer with that, who feel alone, to then find community, right? And like a group of other people who will accept him and who want to bring him in, who might not be the best people for him, right? And then he starts getting brought into this path, and before he has the chance, because he's still so young, right? 23, you're still so young, right? You're still so impressionable. And
well, 23 when he got killed. Right. You know, dial it back to even, you know, younger than that. And, you know, Jamie, he grew up, you know, his mother had no recollection of his mother. Our dad got killed, you know, when he was a kid. And you have, you know, this room full of family who, by no fault of our own, kind of excludes you. You know, so you are going to gravitate to people who you feel like can relate to you, who accepts you, who's not correcting you. Again, you know, it's difficult to grow up with two parents. Imagine having 7 parents, because, you know, we're all, you know, considerably older than him. And so while we did shower him with love, he was very much hurt. He was very much lonely. He was an orphan. He was depressed. And you're going to gravitate to those things that make you feel better, those things that make you feel accepted, those people that, you know, feel like they can relate to you. Yeah, I know what you're going through, because we didn't. We didn't.
I want to talk about, you know, how FedUp was born out of this. But before we get to that really quickly, how do you walk through every day without anyone ever being held responsible for, and I believe that no one was ever held responsible for the murder of your brother either. And I know, you know, I'm sure there was at one point where you're like, I'm literally going to go crazy. Like I would just feel like I would want to go to the police department and just bang on the walls and just be like, someone please do something. Like how do you get through that?
And it's not just like feeling like I'm going to go crazy. Like I almost did. Like I ended up on medication for a while, very depressed. There were days that I would lose the entire day. Like I would have to ask questions like, you know, who picked the kids up? And they're like, you? I mean, you know, and that's very, very scary. But that's just, I was in a deep, dark abyss. Like it's just, you know, and so it's scary. And again, by the grace of God, I'm telling you. And that's why it's so scary when you have these people who have taken lives, because you must not believe in anything. You have no belief in anything. And that's even more scary, that you're that arrogant and that dark, that you don't have any hope, that you think that whatever it is that's happened is so bad that it can't get better and somebody's got to die.
That void, that void of like emotion and connection. And I mean, even, you know, now in, you know, what you do and, you know, your nonprofit, you're seeing, I mean, it seems like gun violence is just continuing to get worse and worse, and people are even more trigger happy, and even younger kids, you know, we're hearing in our local schools, kids with guns in their backpacks. I believe there was just a kid sentenced in Franklin County to 10 years in prison, and he was a minor, and sentenced to 10 years for bringing a gun to school. So, obviously, like, things are now changing where they're cracking down on it harder, but we're also seeing it happen so much more. It's like constant gun violence all the time. Like, what has that been like for you to kind of just see, like, nothing get better in that respect?
It's difficult. It's very difficult. But it also lets me know that the work that we're doing is very important, that it's still very much needed. It's hard to watch the trends, to watching the get younger and younger. FedUp hosts, we have a annual event, Christmas of Hope. And Christmas of Hope originally was geared toward the children who had lost their parents to gun violence. And we would invite them in, and we would help support them financially and help get Christmas for them and just create that safe space for them. During the holidays, everybody gets all weird, and, like, you don't want to say the deceased person's name. It's if the family is forgotten, but, nobody wants to be the one to trigger the crying, or you just don't know what to say. And it's just a very odd time. And then, the children, it's Christmas and you're happy, but then you feel guilty about being happy, or you realize, oh, mom's not there or dad's not there. And so we created Christmas of Hope to create that safe space for them. But now, because the trends have gotten so much younger with the gun violence, these babies have not had an opportunity to have kids. So now we invite the family, the siblings, mom and dad, because we're watching these victims get younger and younger. So, so that's been very difficult to watch, but it also just reignites us even more to change, we have to change with the situation, change our mission, change who our target audience is, and just continue to try to combat it everywhere we see it, to just jump in there and try to do as much prevention and as much healing as we can.
So FedUp just celebrated 20 years, which is amazing. I mean, I cannot even imagine how many people thousands of people you've impacted in 20 years. What has come up for you since the 20th year anniversary? Like, looking back over, the past 20 years.
We look at how far FedUp has come. And so thank you for being a part of that 20-year anniversary. We appreciate your support. And just really looking at, again, the lives that we have impacted, the healing that we've helped to foster, the connections that we've made in the community, people who now help us, who were hurting that we helped, and they're like, FedUp was there for me. And it is amazing to be on these journeys with these families. So, and to look at just even where we started meeting, my house, the other founders' members' homes, talking in parking lots. And so to reflect back and look at how far we've come, and to see all the connections we've made and all the people that we have helped. And they have helped us as well, because it's part of our healing journey. Like this, this thing is not something that goes away. This grief, this hurt, it's just not something that you get over, ever. Honestly, it gets better and you're able to cope with it, but it's not something that you ever get over. So just looking at how far we have come is inspirational. And again, it just helps us to keep going. It's like, okay, because when you're in it, and it's a very dark place to be, in a very gritty, almost grimy work to do. And to be able to, see some light at the end of that tunnel is everything.
Yeah. I can imagine, it can be really difficult to continuously interact with people that are, going through the same things that you went through, and just like continue to see that there are people that are still not getting the justice or the answers that they deserve, or, their cases aren't being taken seriously for whatever reason. And like you said, seeing that it's happening to younger and younger. But, FedUp is such an important part of just making sure that people feel supported so that they don't have to walk alone, which is amazing. And, through you, I've met people who have benefited through FedUp. So I know you already know that the work you're doing is so amazing, but
thank you.
I could tell you forever.
It's nice to hear. It's nice to hear and to be reminded. And, just like you're saying, that even where we were with my father and my brother, now there are people who are still in that same position, or now being put in that position. And to your point, or to your question earlier about FedUp in 20 years, we try to continue to grow with the needs of the residents, of the people. And so because that is so common, people not getting justice, people being mistreated, we have started to expand into legal advocacy. And, we're even partnering with Justice for Me, which is a new spinoff that's being born out of FedUp, to help people to get justice.
Amazing.
Yeah. So from the with the legal avenue of it all. So we do try to continue to change and adjust and meet the needs that are out there.
It's amazing. And that's so important because, like you said, it's happening all the time. We're seeing it. We're not always hearing about it, but it is happening. And people can't walk through alone. They can't do it alone. They do need that extra support and help to be able to get through it. And I guess as we close here, I would ask you, is there anything that you want to say for the people watching? I know there's going to be other people who've watched this who have lost, family members to gun violence. And there might be people watching this who have maybe just recently gone through something and they just they have no idea where to turn or what to do. I would ask you any advice for people.
Well, the first bit of advice I want to give is to the people who have knowledge. If you really, truly want to help the families to heal and their cases have not been solved, if you know something, say something. If you suspect something, say something. Yeah. If you hear something, say something. And don't make the determination, oh, that's not important. That's no big deal. They don't want to hear that. You put the information out there, and then we'll determine, where to put it. Because again, it could just be that missing piece to the puzzle that brings that family closure. So that is something that I would like to say to the public. Yeah. If you know something, please say something. And then to the families, just know that, it is a process. There is no time stamp on grief. My father was killed in 1998, October 1st, 1998, and I still grieve. It is okay. Yeah. It is okay to not be okay. So if you can get connected to somebody that you know, or find a support group, there are people out there, although you feel alone, you're not alone. There's somebody who understands how you're feeling. And to just get connected and get the support that you need, and to know that there's somebody out there who cares, who will listen. For FedUp, we're a safe space. There's no timestamp. So whether you lost your loved one 2 days ago or 20 years ago, we're there to support you in however you need support.
Yeah, connection is so important. It's so important, because you're not alone. Mm-hmm. There's unfortunately others who are walking through this, and there is a way to get through this. It's not easy, but I think you are such a good example of just making something beautiful out of something so horrible and tragic, and really I don't know, I love how much I got to learn about your dad today, and I just totally see that through you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.